Well, hey, welcome. I'm sitting here on the other side of the screen is a good friend of mine. His name is Marty McCrary. He is he serves on staff with me, serving with Advance at our Ballantyne campus. And more than that, though, he is a incredible man of God, an incredible friend. Marty, I'm grateful that you're joining me.
Man, I'm grateful to be here, man. Thank you for allowing me to be on here, man.
If you had to give um the high level things are you are on staff at Forest Hill, you work at the Ballantyne campus, you are married to a wonderful woman of God named Meredith, you have a gorgeous puppy. Give us just like one or two things, including the name of your dog, because I always forget. Give us like one or two things that they wouldn't maybe be on like the bio sheet of who Marty is, but nevertheless, they're things that are either funny or random or just things that we should know about you.
Yeah. Um, his name is Leo, our golden
Leo.
doodle. His name is Leo. We call him Leo the lion. And we get stopped everywhere about him. Just every place they always talk about him. Yeah, he's more popular than almost the president. Um,
Well,
kind of. One thing that people might not know about me is that what is it? I'm very emotional. I'm an emotional person.
mm,
I cry easily. I love giving hugs and all of that. But yeah, I'm emotional. I'm an emotional person. I
mm.
show my feelings.
I love that that's what you led with, because I feel like there's not a lot of men comfortable enough in their own skin to let
Yeah.
that be one of their first descriptors. But let me go on record and say I'm the same way. And I don't know if Meredith ever looks at you like you're just 1% crazy, but I know that my fiance Maya, once in a while, I'll be tearing up at some random thing in a commercial or something, and she's like, "This is a commercial. What are you doing?" And I'm just like, "I don't know."
Yeah, it's a candy commercial. You're crying.
Yeah, like, come on, they're talking about Skittles, but it's just so touching to my soul. Well, I will say this, I cannot guarantee that there won't be tears on this very Zoom call, from
Mhm.
my end and maybe from yours, because we're talking about something that, frankly, if it doesn't elicit some sort of emotional response, I'm concerned about your emotional health. We're talking about injustice in America. We're talking about George Floyd. We're talking about Breonna Taylor. We're talking about Ahmaud Arbery. But those are three names that are indicative of a situation that is far broader than any number of names could ever possibly summarize. We're talking about the condition and climate for non-white people in the United States of America. And I am far from an expert at this. So here's what this is going to look like for anybody watching. It's going to look like me saying a few words and then trying to let Marty, someone who not only is knowledgeable but who has experienced things that I could not imagine experiencing, just kind of talk. So if you're white and you're watching this, let me encourage you, no matter where you find yourself on the plethora of perspectives you could have on this conversation, to just take a backseat and listen. That's what I'm going to do. And I encourage you, if you're non-white and you're watching this, I think Marty's going to have some things to say that both resonate with your experience and that also might open your eyes to some things. And really, Marty, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't a polished, I've given you 18 questions and you know all the talking points. This is really just a conversation between
Mhm.
two people that are frustrated and hurting. And frankly, we don't have as much of an agenda as we just wanted to have a conversation, turn a camera on, and let people hear it.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely it, and it's just straight from our mouths, straight from our hearts. It's nothing polished at all.
So we're going to see what happens. We think it's going to be helpful, though. So, Marty, let's start here. Um, we're in the middle of a pandemic that is disproportionately killing people of color in the nation of America. In the midst of a pandemic, a man is shot on the street by uh, a group of three white men, one of which was filming it on video with a shotgun, for the crime committed of jogging. Uh, Before people can heal from that or even begin to process that, a story that got less attention but nonetheless is noteworthy. A woman was asleep in her home, a black woman in Louisville, a city where I lived for a year and a half. She was shot by police officers asleep in her apartment because they had the wrong apartment number. And instead of checking on her to see if she's okay, they left and forced the person that lived with her to call 911 to then come assist her. She died. And before we could recover from COVID, and before we could recover from Ahmaud Arbery, and before we could even process Breonna Taylor, a viral video comes out of George Floyd being murdered in the street on the sidewalk with a white police officer crushing him. Help me understand your mindset as these events 1, 2, 3, 4 happen in such immediate succession.
Yeah. One, I just want to say thank you, and thank you to the team allowing this to be able to happen. Because I think a lot of times we don't allow ourselves to sit and really just talk about it and sit and process these things. We go on to the next thing, and then now you see moments like this where we have riots and so many other things. So thank you guys for this. But when I see these things, when I hear these things and process these things, man, I see myself. I see myself in those situations that it could be me. When I see Ahmaud Arbery and he's just jogging in the neighborhood, and for him to be hunted down, that's what that was. He was hunted down. For that to happen, I think about that could easily be me at any moment. I love to go jog and run. It's something that I do to try to be fit during this whole quarantine thing. And I'm even thinking about it to right now at this moment as I was getting ready for here. Do I want to run? Do I feel safe running right now? Do I want to run in my complex? Do I want to run on the streets? Like what is safe for me to just run, to just do a leisurely activity? Should I bring my dog? Because people are going to think differently because I have a golden doodle now. So I'm going, like, in my mind, I am going through all these scenarios, all these things, because it can, without a doubt, easily be me. But to be honest, like right now, man, my emotions is all over the place. I am emotionally tired, emotionally exhausted. I have moments of being overwhelmed and having all the frustration in everything. And there's moments that kick into where I'm afraid to even go and drive like down the street. I'm afraid to go to the gas station because of getting pulled over, and I could be the next George Floyd. Like, there is so many things that are happening right now that could easily be me. And I remember me and you talked, and there was Pastor John Gray, and he was just saying that, pretty much that in the church world, he's known as Pastor John Gray. But outside those walls, he's just another big Black male. And that's the reality, is that in church, and in our church, I'm known as Marty, but outside of that, I'm just another 6'7" Black guy that they don't know what I'm going to do. And so it's with all those thoughts, man, is overwhelming. It's tiring.
Yeah, I was struck. I listened to the same interview, and we talked about it yesterday. But it's the idea that that you have the ability in this country of being immediately judged specifically based on your stature and your skin color as a threat. And I think something that I've been processing, because a lot of people say, especially certain people who have grown up maybe primarily in white neighborhoods, they say things like, well, I don't understand why the death of one person leads the entire nation to go into the streets and to protest. But what you're saying is, this is about George Floyd, this is about Ahmaud Arbery, this is about Breonna Taylor, but it's also about the fact that you see yourself, you see people you love, you see people that look like you, and it's not just these situations, it's the fact that it could have been anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people, that's something that I think it's hard for people who are not Black in this country to understand is, okay, Marty, you've never met George Floyd. Like, why does this hurt you so much? I think what people don't understand is exactly what you just said, that it could it could have just as easily been you running
Yeah.
or driving.
Yeah. And,
Um,
and not and not only that, is that it's been happening for so long. And it is almost as if it is just now being televised, to where
mm,
now the whole world is seeing what we have been expressing and saying and fighting for so long, with going back to the civil rights and for Martin Luther King Jr., talking about equality for everybody, not just for one race, but for everybody. And so now when something like this is happening, I feel like there are many people, especially in the African American community, that are grieving right now.
mm,
And it, just like you said, like I have no relations to George Floyd. I have no ties to him. I've never met him before, but I see myself in him in that situation, and I just feel his family's pain. He has a daughter. He has, he has a significant other, and for them, they're not gonna. She's not gonna be able to see her father anymore. Her dad, which in the Black community, which is one of the things that we always talk about, the father not being around. Now, it is not by his own choice that he didn't want to be around, but it was because he was executed to where he cannot be around. And
mm,
the pain that she is experiencing, that she would go through when she gets older from these stories, and his I don't know if it's his fiance, girlfriend, or whoever, but now that she's grieving too and experiencing that. And man, I think about so much of history right now that's coming up
mm,
that our generation has never experienced
mm.
before, and is mind blowing.
You and we talked about uh, Emmett Till,
Hmm.
and I know that that specific story um, is personal to you. Um, would you talk about that?
Yeah, man, oh man, Emmett Till, he did what, he was a young, he was a kid. He was, he might have been in middle school or a little bit younger than that, and he was in a part of town where he shouldn't have been. During that time, there was Jim Crow laws where Black people and white people only stayed in certain areas, and he was in an area that he was not supposed to be in. And he saw a female, a white female that he just was attracted to, and he either whistled or made a comment just about her, towards her, because he's young, he's a kid, and he was attracted to another human. And they got him. Some men, they ended up getting him, and they beat him. They beat his face senseless, to where they beat him and they threw him in a river. You cannot see what his face is, what his where's his eye, where his nose. It is so disturbing what they did to him, all because of an attraction to somebody that looked at it completely different than he did. And so now when I see that, that picture is still in my mind to this day. I was exposed to his story when I was I want to say like maybe in elementary, middle school. And so now, like when I sit here and I'm in an interracial marriage where my wife is white, I just become so grateful right now. Like I am grateful for the position that I'm able to be in, that I am able to marry a wife that loves me for me, that loves my family for my family, and her family loves me, just as if I was born and raised in their own household. And yeah.
Mm. It's I don't know. I think it depends on where you're at. I want to say if you've never seen Emmett Till, um, and you feel like you're able to handle a brutal image, I think if you've never seen it and you are confused about why people feel the way that they do right now, that image might be worth looking at. Because I really just want to underscore what Marty has been saying, which is that this isn't a community's reaction to one event, let alone the fact that there's actually been 3 events in the past 5 or 6 weeks, which should speak for itself, quite frankly. But it's literally centuries of this happening over and over and over again. I think that's really, really important, especially to, I don't know if it's a small percentage or a large percentage of people watching right now who just don't understand why is the Black community so outraged right now. It is because of George Floyd, but it's not because George Floyd's only happened once in the history of our country. It's because this is a string. This is the in the tens of thousands of Black people in this nation since our founding that have been brutally, senselessly murdered in public for no reason. And I think that's just important for people to understand the rage and anger and the not being okay with what's happening. It's not an isolated event. Um, I I love, Marty, you were sharing yesterday. You had a really powerful conversation with your brother-in-law, and you told me that it gave you hope. Would you share just a little bit of that conversation and specifically what about that with your
Yeah.
brother-in-law? So Meredith's brother, who of course that means white. Share with me a little bit about what from that conversation gave you some hope.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, like, it was a total God thing, just how that all lined up to us having that conversation lined up, and for us to say those the thing that is giving us hope. I remember me and my wife, we were talking about, the messages, the media messages that we heard that were phenomenal from the churches all over. And I said to her, I said, I do have hope because
Mm,
of our nieces. They are, we have them from two, our nieces and nephews, that is, from 2, 3, 8, 6, or 7. Um, there's a lot of them. But within that, I have hope in them because now this is when they see somebody that is of color, period, that this is it's going to be the new norm for them.
mm,
And the conversation that I had with my brother-in-law was that, you know, we talked about the whole George Floyd thing, and I don't want to say just thing, but the whole George Floyd situation, and everything about race and reconciliation and what God's word says. And we came down to it, and he said, right now God is calling me. How I can play a part into this is in my family. It's how we are raising our children to love all people,
mm,
all people across the board, no matter what, no matter if you're rich, no matter if you're poor, middle, no matter what, love all people. And so for him to even say that to me, as I knew it for myself, that that God is using their parents to minister to them, like, for knowing that and knowing that he actually lives it out, he walks it out. I've seen it from the first time I met him. It was kind of like we were like brothers, like we were already brothers, and he treated me as a person. It didn't come off as he's going to treat me because of my race or anything.
mm,
Like, he's thinking about my race first. He's thinking about, what does God call me to do? That's to
mm,
love people. What does God call us as Christians, as believers, to do? And that's to love people. And so, for knowing that he was walking it out, not only with me, but with the homeless people, with when he
mm.
is walking in Uptown, we walked in Uptown, and we were coming from a Hornets game, and there was a homeless person that approached us, and they asked for money, and he didn't just give them money. He talked to them.
Wow.
He wanted to know more about them. He wanted to hear their story.
Mm,
And so, knowing that he is walking that out, and he told me a story that they had a glimpse where his daughters were there, and he talked to them. He talked to the homeless guy in front of them, and ended up giving him a meal. But for him to show, like, to have a conversation with them, to get to know people,
mm,
to not judging them by their situation or anything like that, but more so by character, if you want to
mm,
judge for anything. And to know that he's having those conversations with people, that he's meeting them where they're at
mm,
and talking to them versus judging them or treating them a certain way, I think is so powerful.
mm,
And so I love that, being able to see that, and for him to speak that to me as well.
mm. Yeah, that's it's powerful, especially to know that there are some young kids that are being raised maybe in just a different way than has ever
Mhm.
happened before in our nation, and it gives me just right back at you the same similar way, a hope that maybe if more kids are being raised like that, then maybe we don't have to repeat the cycle. Because if I can be honest, just for one quick second, I think the thing that has hit me the most as someone who it doesn't, this is going to be a genius comment, but I've never spent a day in my life black in America. I've been white every day from birth on March 2nd, 1997. And so I've heard stories like this for a long time. And I've always had a somewhat of a tender heart where I don't just read the headline and move on. Like, it's always been like, wow. But for some reason, the comment you've already referenced really stuck out to me, that John Gray said that we know who John Gray is. Or for the example of this Zoom call, I know who Marty is. But people on the street, whether it's an officer or an armed or non-armed civilian, if they don't know you, it what really hits my heart, and I guess what I would hope would resonate potentially, I pray, with anyone watching this who still does not understand what's going on in our nation, that I hope would hit your heart, is that you don't have the opportunity, if you meet the wrong person, to be judged by your character. You are immediately judged by the way that you look. And that hits me because, like, I love you as a brother in Christ, as a man. I love you. You're a friend of mine. And it almost doesn't make sense to me that would happen, but that's happened so often. I don't, it's almost like I don't know what to do. Like, I hang out with you like once or twice a week when work is normal. I'm not with you very often, meaning I don't have any idea what's happening. And I guess this is, I haven't fully formed what I'm saying right now, but I guess what hurts me is that people that I don't love you because, like, I guess what I want to say is, you're not my black friend. You're my friend. So in the same way that I would be appalled if a friend of mine had to be afraid just for leaving his house, I'm appalled because that's the situation that you find yourself in. And I want to talk about this. I didn't know if we should, but I really want to. The president made a speech yesterday. I'm not sure if you heard it. But the president made a speech yesterday, and what he talked about is the need to bring down law and order and the military to quell what he said were violent protesters. Now, this is my perspective, and I'm curious yours. What I see as a nation that is in much ways comprised of African Americans, but is also comprised of white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, people of all ethnicities that are saying, we want change. And what I heard yesterday from the leader of our country is, we need to squash the violent protests. But my understanding of what's happening in our nation is, there are people who are idiots, who are doing foolish things and riling up people. And frankly, what I've been seeing is that there are a lot of white people riling up situations and then leading blame to be put on people of color. But it does not seem like the entire country is being wreaked havoc on by violent protesters. It seems like what's happening is that the system of America works really well for powerful people who are not of color, and that there are some people that are not necessarily excited about a nationwide conversation that would lead to change. I'm curious, when you hear things like, we need to bring the military to silence these things, as someone who's just crying out to say, I just want an equal shot at living my life, driving my car, and exercising, what does that make you think?
It makes me honestly really think that I cannot put my hope in for change or any reconciliation or anything like that. I cannot put my hope on man. I cannot. It is hurtful to hear that, and it sucks to see like some of the things, and it is. Let's be honest. It's people that are hurt. People are hurt that are tired, that don't know what to do, and feel like this is the only way that my voice is going to get heard. This is the only way that people are going to recognize what is going on, and that change has to happen. This is a cry out of pain. And so when I think about these things, and though there is moments where I'm going back and forth what to do, and like, do I want to go run and all of this type of stuff, I have to put my hope in Jesus. I have to put my trust in Jesus. My faith, my hope is all in Jesus. So I have to step out by the power of the Holy Spirit in faith that I'm protected, that I'm covered, that I'm gonna be all right. But not only that, but I got to put my faith, my hope, my trust that by the power of the Holy Spirit, reconciliation will happen.
Mm.
Because I don't know if you remember, we talked about this a little bit too earlier, and this is something that's really stuck out. We had a chance to go to the Civil Rights Museum a couple months ago before everything shut down. And one of the laws that were in South Carolina and North Carolina, was that it was prohibited for interracial marriages to happen. And now I can sit back like, well, we see how that went. So, and I know that was by the power of the Holy Spirit. I know that was God that did that at the end of the day. And believing that God can change things around quickly. And that he uses us, he uses people to help with that change. And I think right now we're all really trying to figure that out. Like, how can we do that? How can we get that change to happen? Because we really want it to happen so fast and so quick. Believe me, I'm one of the ones that want that instant change right now. But I'm reminded that in 2 Corinthians 5, that God uses us. He uses us. We're his handiwork. He uses those who have acknowledged our ways and acknowledged his ways, that he is Jesus, he is Lord of all. He uses us to reconcile, for reconciliation. And Jesus did that. That's the gospel. He did that. He did that in a system where it was belittling others, and when it was exiling people and demoralizing people. He came to abolish all that. He flipped literally tables over because of that. And so knowing that, seeing Jesus, how he did it, and being reminded of in John 4, when Jesus met the Samaritan at the well, I think like going even more deeper, studying even more about that, how there was a barrier right then and there, because he was a Jew, she was a Samaritan. They weren't supposed to even be talking to each other. And she acknowledged that and mentioned that. But Jesus didn't care anything about that. He said that I know, but he didn't serve, and he didn't speak truth to her out of his race, out of where he's from. He did that out of the gospel. He did that out of, there's a need to be met, and she needs to be healed, and she needs to be loved. And so he did with that, whatever it took at that moment, which was, I'm hot, give me a drink, and had a conversation with her, and her whole life changed. And so that's where I put my hope, is that there's going to be moments that are like this, where we're sitting down having conversations, that there will be many others that are having conversations that look different than them, skin color, economic background, everything. I'm having hope by the power of the Holy Spirit that more conversations will form and happen to where there can be reconciliation amongst each other. So that's what we're called to do at the end of the day. So,
and I think it's powerful that it sounds like, I mean, if the person we say we follow as Christians, Jesus, he did this. It seems to me then that this is not an optional kind of sidebar issue if you're a Christian. It sounds like this should be a non-negotiable, that if you are in Christ and you say, hey, I'm following Jesus, that having conversations with people that may have a different experience than you, different background than you, they look different than you, that's not only acceptable, that's actually part of the calling. And I know this is your heart as well, is that this should be the church. Like, this should be what we're known for. Not the most segregated hour of our nation, but that we're leading a conversation with each other to say, hey, help me understand your experience. Tell me what I don't know, because I don't know it. And I think we've missed that for too long. But I told you this yesterday, and I want to say this to you again publicly, but I want to say it to everybody watching. Every Black person watching right now, I want you to know, you do not owe us anything. But if and when you are emotionally ready to share your perspective, it is so valuable, because we don't have your perspective. Some people don't want to hear it, but there are a lot of us who do. And we cannot know what we've never experienced. But the way that we can learn it is from you. And so I want to say to you specifically, thank you for sharing with me for like 2 hours yesterday, but again on this video podcast. But I want to say to anyone watching, you don't owe let me just be real clear. You don't owe white people some kind of explanation for how you feel or help us understand. Like, you don't owe us that. But I'm saying, if you get to a place where you can have a conversation like this with a friend, you have no idea how valuable it can be to help them understand the way that you see things. Because it's not that we necessarily want to not understand, it's that we've just never been in the same place, been in the same shoes. I said yesterday, what you're doing right now, Marty, is, they say you should walk in someone else's shoes, and you're lending us your shoes. And I want to say thank you. I want to ask this, and I think we should wrap up in just a second, but to those of us watching, there's white students, there's non-white students, there's a multiplicity of people. There's people who aren't students. There's just people watching. I'm not telling you to give a seven-step plan to make our country whole, but if you could just address people watching right now, what would you want people ultimately to take away?
Yeah. Ultimately, the takeaway is do what one of the greatest commandments that Jesus calls us to do, and that's to love our neighbors. We sometimes try to figure out who is our neighbor. Is the poor? Is the rich one? Is the next door neighbor? It's everybody. Love your neighbors. That's love every single person as a human being. Not only that, but doing exactly what we're doing right now is to actually just sit down and just talk to somebody. Maybe there is somebody that's been like me all week, an emotional wreck, and trying to deal with all of the emotions. Just sit down and talk with somebody. Could be your friend, could be your family member. But I really do hope that this conversation doesn't just stop right here, but it actually continues to go into your household. It continues to go within your parents, where you're talking with your parents, or if you're an adult and you're watching this, that you talk to your children about this and be honest with them. And at that, search your heart. What is God calling you to do right now about this? How has God been speaking to you during these times? What has he been revealing to you in these times? And I pray that whatever that is, that you would give it to him, and that he will reconcile your heart. That way you can reconcile lies outwardly. So.
That's beautiful. Marty, thank you. Thank you. This has been a treat and a privilege and a needed conversation. And it's not lost on me that you had a similar conversation to this at Advance less than a month ago. And if that doesn't show why something needs to be done, that the same conversation over a different example had to happen in the same month, something's got to change, and it needs to start with us as people who love Jesus. Have a conversation. I love that. Have a conversation. You never know what a conversation could lead to. Thank you for letting us have this conversation with you. This means so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for allowing me to be on here and just share my heart and share what I've experienced. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for your constant encouragement, man, and really being a friend that I can lean on in this season. So I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, man.
Well, thank you. Hey, this Sunday at Advance, we're having a conversation around the same general lines. It's not going to be a regurgitation of this conversation, but we're talking about George Floyd. We're talking about the state of our country. We're talking about what we can do as believers. That's at Forest Hill Advance on YouTube. Starts at 7 o'clock. Would love for you to be there. Marty, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.